The founder of the satirical site Babylon Bee is disinvited from speaking at his Christian school alma mater for the grave sin of harboring ideas that are actually Christian. Now we know where he got the brilliant idea for a satire-based website in the first place. The headlines just seem to write themselves. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the one, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start at Palm Beach Atlantic Christian University, I emphasize Christian, where Seth Dillon, an alumnus of the school and the founder of the Christian satirical website Babylon Bee, was just told he's too Christian to speak at an event being held in the chapel. So, this is one of those stories that makes you want to pull your hair out. I wish I had hair so I could pull it out. You got a Christian university now that has bowed to the pressure of a couple of smug kids who protested Dylan from coming. If you've read the Babylon Bee, it is really quite a witty, quite a amusing parody of modern culture. It is primarily satirizing left-wing causes and their overreach. And so at this Christian college, what happens? A number of kids start tweeting, right? That people are offended. People are offended. They had a story mocking Black Lives Matter. They had a story that didn't take seriously transgender people. The hurt and pain he's caught, he's brought to people is enough. You're at a Christian university. If there's one virtue a Christian student should be learning at a Christian university, is humility. The idea that these little Nazis think that with a tweet, they're somehow empowered to shut down speech, to stop an alumnus from speaking. Oh, and on top of everything else, Dylan actually donated $300K to the university so that they could begin a program. And still, the cowardly, vacillating university trembled in fear at a couple of tweets, a little Twitter storm, and they disinvited him.
Well, to be fair to the university, which they shouldn't be, they just disinvited him from speaking at the chapel because it's a sacred space. But they changed the location to the library, which I'm sure now means the library must go, because if you're going to allow such filth into that library. But as you said...
Yeah, but to be clear, the university was the one who invited him to speak in the chapel.
Exactly.
And then when the tweets came in, well, this guy obviously is a sinner, right?
Oh, of course.
So we take him out of the sacred place and it'll be okay.
So let's take a look at the tweet that...
Melody Faith. Nice name, honey. Irony. No, it's an irony thing.
Yes. Hold on, though. Let me get to the quote that Dylan originally wrote on September 25th, saying that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. And he was commenting off of Andy No, who Andy No would know about it because he's a reporter who's been on the ground and actually physically getting beat up by these people, I'll say. And anyway, so Melody Faith, who is a student at the university, said this should be enough reason to not welcome Seth Dillon to our campus, not to mention that every LGBTQ student has been disrespected and degraded by his content. And one quick click on the profile of our friend Melody Faith, looking at what her profile is, says my vibes can be a bit intense. Theology, social justice, and feminism wrapped up in a bundle of enthusiasm. And she's going to graduate in 2021, so she's either junior, senior. And her pronouns are she and her.
This bright light of intellectual diversity actually chose a Christian university and is stunned, shocked, I tell you, when there are people who actually take Christianity seriously. Seth Dillon is one of those people, right? And the fact that she now goes to school at a place dedicated to creating more Seth Dillons, she is one of the people who gets him disinvited.
All right, so then Dylan wrote, cancel culture has come for me. And he posted screenshots of people contacting the university who are speaking out against him. He says, I'm just too dangerous and divisive to be permitted to speak on the campus of my alma mater. Since when do you have to support terrorist organizations that use violence and intimidation to advance their agenda to be welcome on a Christian campus? Apparently, 2020 is
And good for him for doubling down on his criticism of Black Lives Matter.
Well, that's the brilliance of the Babylon Bee.
And the beauty of the Babylon Bee is that statement he just made that you read, that could be satire itself.
That, exactly.
Literally, it's satire, it's unintentional satire. He makes a career, obviously, if he's handing out $300,000 checks, obviously Seth Dillon is doing well. The bee is buzzing. right? So you like that?
I like that.
He's making a lot of money satirizing primarily left-wing culture, not anti-Christian culture. And so along comes Melody Faith,
And the others, yeah.
and the others, and they decide that this Christian college we attend should be about non-Christian issues, right? Our job as Christian students is to mainstream transgenderism, is to turn the Christian school into another politically correct school devoid of any principle. And when we invite our famous alumni who happen to be the Christians who built the school and continue to donate to the school, we had to cancel it.
Well, okay, a couple different points. Number one, the university was just awful as a university because the afternoon before he was supposed to speak is when they contacted him. So that's mightily professional of them to be like, by the way, we're canceling you. Not because, oh man, inclement weather or anything.
But that's how they all do it.
That's how they all do it.
They all do it, yep.
Also, the executive vice president for advancement, Laura Bishop, wrote an email forwarded to Dylan by a faculty member that talked about the sacred space justification for, as to why they're canceling him, basically. We anticipated that an honest conversation like this could become passionate and that emotions may run high. We did not want to compromise the sacredness of a chapel gathering, and after heated exchanges on social media, it was decided that the Lassiter Rotunda of the Warren Library would be a more suitable venue for Mr. Dylan. Here's the deal. What passionate emotions would be running high? This conversation they were going to have with a man who created an alum who created a business that writes about satirical material, talking to a bunch of the kids. Here's the questions they were going to be asked.
Do I have to get my big boy pants? Is this going to scare me? Are you going to pull me out of my safe space?
Here it is. Ready? They were going to ask questions like, did you have a favorite professor at the university?
Oh, he didn't.
I know.
Oh, my God.
Also, humor can be a really subjective thing. Are there any Babylon Bee posts that you don't think were great that got a huge response or vice versa?
Oh, my God. Losing control of my pee reflex because I'm so traumatized. Oh, my God.
Someone get some toilet paper over here. Oh, gosh. Ew, it's wet.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm traumatized.
And then, of course, Dylan explained the assumption that I would bring a Twitter discussion into chapel and stray from the subject matter I agreed to discuss was pretty uncharitable. So he had already agreed to what they were going to discuss. He's an alum of that university that supposedly, as you indicated in the intro, taught him all of this about how to be a Babylon Bee, satirist and create such a organization. He said, it seemed to me that it was an excuse. What they wanted to do was cancel me without canceling me and appease everyone involved.
Well, and here's the thing that gets me. Dylan said he is a graduate of Palm Beach Atlantic Christian College, which he attended from 2000 to 2004, as you said. He is, quote, a Christian running a successful Christian media company, a Christian running a Christian media study. You think this would be embraced by the Christian school.
That he graduated from.
He employs 10 Palm Beach Atlantic graduates. So he hires Christian kids.
How dare he?
Maybe Melody Faith could have been one of those kids.
Maybe.
On a full-time. So he also told Campus Reform that he recently donated 300K in seeding funding to launch a new master's program at the university.
How dare he?
Bankrolling, right? Campus Reform then asked Dylan what it would take for him to donate to Palm Beach Atlantic University in the future, given the way he was treated. He answered that, quote, if the university were to boldly and openly engage in the battle against cancel culture and take a clear stand against it and back up people like me to the mob instead of doing exactly what the mob wanted them to do, then I wouldn't have any qualms about donating to them in the future. And if I were him, I'd take that 300K back.
We all know that everything is racist, and that includes college football. And we're going to be talking about a school that's near and dear to your heart, so get ready. Did you control yourself from the pee of last segment?
Just because I occasionally watch their football team doesn't mean I think the administration is a bunch of liberal idiots.
Okay, again, this is a near and dear. He's
Can I say,
already. Yep. Mm-hmm,
while you're about to
haven't even gotten started.
Let me just say,
Here
you're
it
about
is.
to do this story. This one is so incredibly ridiculous. I thought it was satire from the Babylon Bee. This story occurring at Ohio State is so off the rails of common sense, so profoundly stupid from beginning to end that I thought this couldn't be true. But it is true.
Well, the Babylon Bee, to be fair, they can be as lazy as they want because this stuff does just write itself. They don't even need to think. All right. Back to this story. Ohio State professor of education says it all.
Well, that's part of the problem.
Education administration, double whammy. Matthew J. Mayhew is now canceling himself. he wrote an essay in Inside Higher Ed, and it was called Why America Needs College Football. And he basically says that Saturday college football is helping Americans with a necessary distraction in 2020.
That's it.
Because guess what? 2020 has been a bleep of a bleep, and we need something.
Not only did he write an article, but with the benign theme, that we need college football to forget, a major publication inside college presses, the college world, accepted this without any problem.
Okay.
All right.
In the article, he wrote, essentializing college football might help get us through these uncharacteristically difficult times of great isolation, division, and uncertainty. Indeed, college football holds a special bipartisan place in the American heart. At a time when colleges and universities have been placed under extreme scrutiny, many people are questioning the very value and purpose of higher education. College football reminds many Americans of the community values that underscore higher education, and by extension, America itself.
Based on that passage you just read, last 6 or 7 lines, what's the one word that pissed him off?
America.
That's close. Bipartisan.
Bipartisan. Yeah, that's why I stressed it.
In other words, he depoliticized
How dare
something in an environment where everything has to be political. That was his mistake.
So he wrote the word bipartisan, and then he got himself on the fast track to canceling himself. He had to issue an apology.
Well, what happened to make him have to issue an apology?
Oh, he was being accused of abject racism.
So
and
for writing what Katie
white
just,
supremacy.
Right, for saying that football has the ability to unite us all, right? That it brings us together in turbulent times. It's a bipartisan distraction. He was accused of white supremacy and rampant racism. What was the argument for that?
He wrote Inside Higher Ed again. So maybe he was just trying to get another article in the maybe that's it. All right, so he bowed down. He says, I have learned that I place the onus of responsibility for democratic healing on black communities whose very lives are in danger every single day, and that this notion of a democratic healing is especially problematic since the black community can't benefit from ideals they can't access.
So, literally, the problem...
Here we go. I have learned that words like distraction and cheer erase the present painful moments within the nation and especially the black community. I am sorry for the hurt, sadness, frustration, fatigue, exhaustion, and pain this article has caused anyone, but specifically black students in the higher education community and beyond. I am struggling to find the words to communicate the deep ache for the damage I have done.
What did you do?
This guy might be top 10 dumbest professors of 2020. Mark him down.
He's such a whiny little spineless pansy face. You side with his persecutors. If you're going to bend over and grab the ankles because you dared to say that college football has a healing component, and if that's what you're going to do.
The word cheer and the word distraction erase the present painful
moments. And how about the racial assumption of his critics? That by talking about college football as a healing thing, you are singling out black athletes. That somehow it's only blacks who play college football.
Or watch, or it's the black community. But they can't participate is what he's saying overall. And the fact that he wrote on how he thinks that his article was read by all these people is kind of funny.
Nobody read it.
Absolutely no one read it.
But again, the premise is that somehow college football is a black thing. That's sort of the assumption of the critics. That's a black thing, right? And that by asking the black students to go out there and play, we were taking away somehow from the really horrible issues that black people face.
Yes, so he's canceling himself. He's engaging in anti-racist learning with the help of colleagues and students.
Can you imagine what those sessions are like?
Yeah, he says he's addressing his uninformed and disconnected whiteness. I don't want to know what it is.
Repeat that line again. He is addressing his what?
Uninformed and disconnected whiteness.
Disconnected to what? Connected to the stupidity of the modern left. This is Orwellian beyond Orwell. George Orwell could not have predicted this kind of unilateral surrender of everything human in this guy. And the Babylon Bee could not possibly write a story this ridiculous and have anybody take it seriously. So this guy canceled himself. This self-loathing, sit when he pees, complete joke of a human being is talking about how his disconnected whiteness was on full display because he was cheering black athletes and white ones as well to go out there and play college football like you were recruited to do, like you are paid handsomely. Free room and board, free tuition, free medical care, free meals, free therapy, free books, free tutors, all because You can throw and catch a football, right?
So, in addition to all the stupidity of the last professor, we have another professor who's putting out some stupid. This actually happened back in August, but the story came out now. A Midwestern State University professor named Nathan Yoon decided it was wise to go on Facebook and to call for all law enforcement officials to be strangled to death. And now he's facing death threats and being doxxed. I didn't see it coming. Yoon, who teaches courses on healthcare ethics.
Healthcare ethics. He wants all police officers strangled, and he's a professor of care ethics.
Yes, also philosophy of race and racism, multicultural philosophy, and philosophy of horror and macabre. I think that might be his fun class. Anyway, the post he wrote was, I want the entire world to burn until the last cop is strangled with the intestines of the last capitalist, who is strangled in turn with the intestines of the last politician. Okay.
With all due respect, Nathan, buddy.
Thanks.
Why don't you strangle yourself with your own intestines? Because you are a beneficiary of capitalism. Only in capitalist systems like the one you occupy can somebody get tenure after 6 years for doing very little and never be fired again. You are the privileged child of our capitalistic system because you're one of the only people who have a job that require, after you get a meaningless thing called tenure, you cannot be removed, even for saying such asinine things as you're saying here. And as bad as Professor Yoon is, or June, or Jun, however he pronounces his name, as bad as he is, I still feel more sympathetic to him than to that last idiot who completely, again, sacrificed his every last scrap of humanity and masculinity he had to the cancel mob. This guy wants to take the guts out of the last capitalist and strangle the last police officer for it. No wonder he is a professor who teaches about horror and the macabre.
All right, university, of course, came to his defense.
Of course they did.
Free speech and all that. He says that, or they say, as a public university, we recognize and protect individuals' free speech rights under the First Amendment so that ideas and information may be freely exchanged and examined without the threat, I feel like threat is what he did, of censorship or retaliation. Occasionally, individuals will express opinions that may be offensive and even shocking, but are nonetheless entitled to First Amendment protection. When our faculty members speak or write as citizens within the confines of the law, they are free from institutional censorship or discipline.
So do you think if I were at that university and I wrote that I would not rest until the very last Black Lives Matter person was strangled with the intestines of the very last Antifa person, do you honestly think
then you need the more intestines of the politicians who support these groups or will not denounce them?
Yes.
Oh.
Related to Kamala Harris. There's my third.
Ooh, but you named out a specific. You might get in trouble on that one.
Democrat.
Or the socialists. Just say socialists because they're going with capital. If you want to go, okay.
So if I said that, do you think I'd get the same response?
I'm going to go with no.
No. They might grudgingly not be able to do anything to me, but it would have been all about, we condemn in no uncertain terms the comments of Professor Pesta. We think this kind of discourse debases the culture, and it is unworthy of his position as a university professor at a public university. However, because of the stupid Constitution, we're not allowed to fire him. That is what I would get. I guarantee you.
Well, by the end of September, then, Nathan wrote and said how he had received more than 300 death threats, phone, email, text, private message. They're all doxing him and all this. So now he's the victim in this whole thing, of course. And he says, as a person who doesn't own a gun or have a criminal record and who belongs to a member of a historically persecuted group that is greatly underrepresented in Wichita Falls, I am very clearly an easy target.
What group does he represent that's underrepresented? Which is it?
Good question.
Is it the dumbass?
No, they're hot and heavy there. There's hot and heavy. Anyway, but he does say that I do long to live in a world in which we no longer have cops, which we no longer have capitalists, and which we no longer have politicians, because those are my political beliefs and I own them and I make no apologies for those beliefs.
Good. And then you wonder, after making those threats to people's life and livelihood, why they're threatening you. So in other words, again, the world's smallest violin plays for you.
It's time for some real education. In 1882, the Basilica de la Sagrada Familia began construction. It's a Roman Catholic minor basilica that's quite large and unfinished and is located in Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain. Catalan architect Antoni Gaudi designed the basilica, but he died in 1926, and now plans are in the works to have the building finally completed by 2026. About a decade ago, on November 7, 2010, Pope Benedict XVI consecrated the church and proclaimed it a minor basilica.
Yes, and this is a really interesting church. It's dedicated to the Holy Family, Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And take a look at some of the images while I go through recount some of the history. On March 19th, 1882, construction on this cathedral began under architect Francisco de Paula de Villar. In 1883, when Villar resigned, Gaudi took over as chief architect, transforming the project with his architectural and engineering style, combining Gothic and curvilinear Art Nouveau forms. Gaudi devoted the remainder of his life to the project, and he is buried in the crypt at the cathedral site. At the time of his death in 1926, less than 25% of the project was completed, relying solely on private donations, which is remarkable. This particular minor basilica progressed very slowly and was interrupted by the Spanish Civil War. Take a look at the ceiling work on that. That's a whole new kind of cathedral here. It's putting a modernist slant on the traditional Gothic cathedral in really remarkable ways. Of course, building on the cathedral was stopped during the Spanish Civil War. In July 1936, revolutionaries set fire to the crypt and broke their way into the workshop, partially destroying Gaudi's original plans, drawings, and plaster models, which led to 16 years of work to piece together the fragments of the master model. Construction resumed to intermittent progress in the 1950s. And here we are, they're still trying to build this. So it is a remarkably remarkable. Go back to the first couple of slides, Mike. Okay. You get a look at what looks on the horizon. Just a stunningly beautiful building. Incomplete. Go to the next one. Get a sense of the uniqueness of what he's doing with the traditional Gothic, right? With those, you've got the windows that look like they're right out of a medieval cathedral, but then below them you've got the bank of windows that are highly modern. Go to the next one again real quick. You can see Gaudi here when the thing was just taking shape way back in the early 19 teens. Look a little bit further here. Again, that ceiling there is out of this world. It looks like something that is recognizable. It's recognizable like the way of Notre Dame Cathedral was or Chartres Cathedral is, but it's also completely punctuated by this melding, this fusion of traditional medieval Gothic and this Art Nouveau, giving you something really neat. So as much, and that particular is quite interesting too. You get a sense to see of the layered look of it, and how very, very, in some ways traditional and other ways very, very different it is. So we salute Mr. Gaudi for this project, which maybe will be done by 2026.
All right, as always, if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation of $99 toward our Patriot Club. As a thank you, we're going to ship you this impressive stainless steel tumbler etched with the words, "Freedom never tasted so good." So visit patriotclub.us to get started. That's patriotclub.us. And as always, we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. The first ever college football game, supposedly, was played on November 6th, 1869, and it was Rutgers and Princeton, which at the time was called the College of New Jersey. The Rutgers Queensmen won 6-4 over the New Jersey Tigers, and attendance was 100 people. But it took until the 1880s for a rugby player, that's why we were talking 6-4 as a score, from Yale, known as Walter Camp, to come up with the rules that now turned the rugby into the true American football.
I think you need to apologize for putting the onus of healing society on the Queensland's players from Rutgers. And that's going to do it for the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.